In this chapter, we are going to be focusing on the skeleton, or the bones, if you will, of the torso. I tend to separate the torso out where at the bottom of the hips, so anything that goes below here and anything that connects to the shoulder blades here, and then basically cut away the neck. So essentially anything that's inside of this I consider to be the torso, just to keep it nice and simple. So we are going to be starting off with the rib cage here. Again, I can't stress how important it is to simplify this into something more manageable, because this gets very, very, very complicated. There is just so much stuff happening here. And while of course it is important when it comes to anatomy, I rarely actually find it to be that useful to really think about the individual ribs. You might see sometimes that the origin point of this muscle goes from the third rib to whatever. And that is, of course, useful if you want to be 100% specific about it. But more often than not, I find this to be a bit overcomplicated. Now, what we will talk about, though, is just the overall structure of it. So again, egg shape with a cut out in the middle. It's the ugliest drawing I've ever done. Apologies. Egg shape in the middle, like so. And this egg shape here is pretty important, because this determines a lot on the of the actual structure of the person. If you're sculpting a woman, this is more likely to be like the 60 degrees. And whatever, this is not 60, but it tends to be 60 degrees. And 90 degrees is for when you're sculpting men. So if this is 90 degrees, then you are most likely looking at a man. There's of course a lot of variation here, but this is more like a generally pretty good way to think about it. And then in the center, we have the sternum. The sternum is made of two parts. The top part is called the manubrium, and the bottom part here is the main part of the sternum. And this is important because some muscles, like the pectoralis major, does connect to parts of this, and you can see the separation in this. It's also important because you can see a plane change here as well. See here, it goes like this here, and then it goes down. So the sternum is not one homogeneous part. It is actually three parts. You have a little guy down here as well. You're not going to see this a whole lot, but on particularly skinny people, you can sometimes see this guys through. So if you're looking at somebody who's particularly skinny and seeing a little notch there, that's probably this guy here. So the sternum, really important because we have this plane change right here. And then we have the ribs. We have 12 ribs in total. If you might be a little religious, you might know that there are differences between ribs with men and women, and that's just not true. Like, yeah, in no way is that like anatomically true. Men and women have the exact same amount of ribs. So we have 12 ribs in total. You can also see here that the shape of this actually becomes important, because some of these are very simple. They're just bones connected, like so. They're just very simple bones. They're just bony shaped bones that are curved. But these ones here are different, because here you see this shape here, the webbing here gets a little complicated. This here is important if you're dealing with like skinnier characters, where you can see the ribs, which you can in somebody is really lean. So this stuff here is really important. The way I tend to simplify this down, to be honest, is, which I think is important, is I tend to essentially do almost like a point here, and then I just kind of tend to like fan this off like so. So essentially just a point here, and it just goes zoop, 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 zoop. And then these kind of guys just continue wrapping around it like so. Because otherwise it becomes really complicated. You start to like really look into like the space, how it goes. Nope, just one little thing here, and do zoop, 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 and zoop. So that's really useful. So 5 connected, and 5 connected to the other part, and 2 floating. So that's the ribs. Then we have the scapula. The scapula is also just called the shoulder blade. And if you want to keep calling it the shoulder blade, totally fine. Everyone would 100% understand you. But in terms of purely anatomical terms, it's referred to as the scapula. And again, like we're talking about in the proportion chapter, about 1 head width between these, like so. The scapula is often smaller than you think. I find it to be around the same size as a human hand. So if you're super flexible, if you have somebody nearby who you trust, you can just place your hand under a scapula, and you can see it's about the same size as a human hand. What's really important here, a few important things. What's really important is that we have the main triangular shape, like so. Very simple. There's a triangle, like so. And then at the end of this triangle, this is where the arm attaches. So this is really important. This was something I didn't understand for the longest time. Specifically, where does the arm attach? The arm attaches right here. And if you were to look at a skeleton of it, you can actually see that it goes a bit inwards. Like it actually has like this socket for an arm to rotate around. And then another important thing is this guy here that goes off of it, like so. This is really, really, really important. The way you simplify this is you simply just make this go out and just kind of make it a straight thing across. But then at the end of it, you need to have a square. This square is called the acromion process. The acromion process is really, really, really important. And it connects to the clavicles that we will get to in a second. If you notice here, it goes up like so. And then it basically just forms a square like so. This is important for a few different reasons. First off, muscle doesn't really go on top of this. So even if you're super buff and you have all the muscle in the world, this is still a pretty exposed area in terms of bone. Which means if you were to look at this from a front view, you would often see, even if you have someone like some mega strong or something like on all the roids in the world, you would often see this shape here, where you have a plane change right here because of the acromion process. Process, another word for pointy bit. So there are a lot of pointy bits in the body. So this is really important. Another really important reason for us to remember this spot is that this is where the clavicles or the collarbones attach. So it goes like so, and it goes like so. The way you can memorize this is just you have a box that goes like so, and then you have the clavicles going here. The clavicles to collarbones going right here. This is just really important, and these guys here are attached, so they're not like fused as bones, but they're attached together here, so that if you were to like raise your arm, your collarbone would go up, your clavicle would go up, and your scapula would also go up, because these two are connected. One of them cannot go up without the other one. It's also why, for instance, if you were to like break your collarbone here, you'll be in real trouble in terms of like using your arm, because you literally have no structural integrity of your arm at that point. And then we have our clavicles or our collarbones. And I just want to reiterate the way we talked about these before, because this is really important. This here is simply a bow and an arrow, where we have the sternum in the center. And notice the sternum is indeed in the center. The clavicles are not going like so. They're not just going into each other. There is about like, I can actually feel it yourself. I'm doing this right now, actually, like where you have about an inch or like about the width of a thumb between these two, which is also a fun fact. That's the measurement of an inch. It's just the width of a thumb. So this goes down here and it goes down like so, and this forms this beautiful bow and arrow shape. There's a reason the bow and arrow shape, and this would be similar because it's a very structurally sound shape. And again, as a reminder, it's a structurally sound shape, but also if this was straight, you would choke and die, which is bad. So the clavicles, quite simple. Just be observant of the angle here as well in your reference, because there's going to be some variation there. And then just be aware of, again, the gap between these. And this is where the sternocleidomastoid muscle that we talked about before, the sternocleidomastoid attaches. Attaches here and attaches here. And then we have the hips. And I really think the Mickey Mouse shape is like the best way to talk about this. It's just a shape, just the Mickey Mouse ears and just a little Mickey Mouse here. And this is really useful because it is just a complicated shape. And then we just have to be aware of the ridge here. This is called the iliac crest as well. So this is really important. It goes all the way back here because there's so much stuff happening here. And this is basically the separation between the upper and the lower body. Because you can see here, this is where we have This here would be the lower body. This is where you have muscles going from here to like so. Technically, we'll get into that in the legs chapter, but it goes like this, and then it goes like down here. So these are like the butt muscles. And they go from below. And then you have the muscles that go from the top, and they go down like here. So it's really important to be aware of this crest here. This is really important. You also have an important point as well. This is called just the ascis And this is an important point because this is also where there's muscle attachment, and it's also a point you're going to be seeing, and also it's the frontmost point of the iliac crest. So this one, crazy important to get right. And also notice here as well, when it comes to the hips, this is something that may not be entirely obvious, but there is a hole in here as well. This is to do with intestines and babies and all that kind of stuff going through here. That's just important to keep in mind. And then it goes, Mickey Mouse ears, goes down like so, and you have this stuff, it goes down like so, and then you have the line here. This is an important one to keep in mind as well, because there are muscle attachments here as well, but also just because it's a separation between the top and the bottom. And then we have these two shapes here on the back. They're quite circular, as you can see, and this is where there is muscle attachment as well. We're going to see this later in the legs chapter, where we are going to be seeing muscle attachment to these. Less important, I would say, in terms of like surface anatomy, because this stuff here, this entire thing here is mostly going to be covered. At least all this stuff is mostly going to be covered, apart from just this here. So it's less important to understand the intricacies of this stuff. This is something you're going to be seeing where on the back of some people. This is where we have like the dimples on the back. You're going to be seeing this point. So important one to keep in mind as well, that we have this. And then lastly, for the skeleton of the torso is just, again, notice, if you just cut away an arm here, if you just notice how deep in the spine actually goes. This is just really important. Keep in mind, like this is the outer point, goes all the way here, and then goes all the way in here, almost to like 1/3 mark or something like that. Really important for the structure as well. And notice the spine going into the hips as well. Like, it's really common to do this, where the hip is like all the way out here, or like the spine is all the way out here compared to the hip, when in reality, it goes pretty much bang on in the center when it comes to the hips. So just important to keep that in mind. Again, just want to reiterate the 3 C's when it comes to the spine. And that's it for the skeleton overview of the torso.